I remember the bandages first. White, clinical, with thin metal strips that ran across the bridge of her nose. They looked foreign on my mother's face, an alien attachment that didn't belong there. I was 7 years old, sitting on the edge of her bed while she tried to smile at me through eyes that wouldn't quite open fully. The bruising had spread beneath both of them, creating dark purple crescents that made her look like she hadn't slept in days. "Does it hurt, Mommy?" I asked, my small hand hovering over her face, afraid to touch. "Just a little, Ethan," she said, her voice gentle despite the strain. "The doctor says I'll be good as new in a few weeks." I wanted to believe her. I did believe her. Children are magnificent at absorbing the realities adults construct for them, no matter how paper-thin. "Can I hug you?" I whispered, already leaning forward. "Of course you can, sweetheart. Just be careful of Mommy's nose, okay?" I crawled closer, nestling against her side where the afternoon sun streamed through half-drawn blinds. The bedroom smelled of antiseptic and the lavender perfume she always wore. Somehow, the combination was comforting rather than jarring. "Mommy had an operation," my father explained later that evening as he microwaved dinner for us. His voice was steady, reasonable. "Sometimes when people get older, they need to fix things in their body, like when we took your bike to the repair shop last month, remember?" I nodded solemnly while pushing dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets around my plate. Dad was good at explaining things in ways I could understand. He was a high school physics teacher, patient, methodical, respected. Everyone in our suburban neighborhood thought so. "But she'll be okay?" I asked, needing the reassurance. "Of course she will." He smiled, ruffling my hair. "Your mom's a fighter." That night, I overheard Mrs. Keller from next door talking to my Aunt Lydia in our kitchen. Their voices were hushed, but sound carries in our old colonial house with its creaking floorboards and thin walls. "A deviated septum," Mrs. Keller whispered. "That's what they're telling everyone." "And you believe that?" Aunt Lydia's voice was sharp. "It's not my place to say. But Rebecca's always been clumsy. 3 broken wrists in 5 years? Come on. Robert is so charming in public, always the first to volunteer at school functions. The quiet ones are always the worst." I didn't understand what they meant then. I pictured my father helping me with science projects, teaching me to throw a baseball in our backyard, making my mother laugh over breakfast. I couldn't connect their whispers to the man who checked my homework every night. The weeks passed, and Mom's bandages came off. The bruising faded from purple to yellow to nothing. Her smile returned, though sometimes I caught her staring out windows a beat too long, as if watching for something approaching on the horizon. Life settled back into its familiar rhythm. School, baseball practice, family dinners where Dad talked about his students and Mom asked about my day. I mostly forgot about the operation, except when Mom would occasionally touch the bridge of her nose absent-mindedly, as if making sure it was still there. It wasn't until Christmas that year that I noticed something had changed. We were at my grandparents' house, and Mom flinched when Grandpa John hugged her too enthusiastically. Later, I saw her standing alone in the kitchen, gripping the counter edge until her knuckles turned white. "Mom?" I asked, and she quickly wiped her eyes, turning to me with a bright smile that didn't reach those eyes. "Yes, sweetheart? Are you still hurting from your operation?" Something flickered across her face. A shadow, there and gone in an instant. "Sometimes things take longer to heal than we expect," she said, kneeling down to my level. "But don't worry about me. I'm tough, remember?" I nodded, but something tugged at the edges of my understanding. A loose thread I couldn't quite grasp. I watched her return to the living room, laughing at something my father said, her hand automatically reaching for his as she sat beside him on the sofa. I didn't know then that I was watching a performance. I didn't know that some scars never truly heal, that some pain becomes so familiar it feels like part of you. I didn't know that the truth, like my mother's nose beneath those bandages, had been carefully reconstructed, made presentable, acceptable, anything but what it really was. That wouldn't come until much later. 10 years later, to be exact. I was 17 then, with gangly limbs and a voice that had finally stopped cracking mid-sentence. High school was a minefield of college applications, SAT prep, and the constant, exhausting performance of pretending to have everything figured out. But home was still home, the one constant in a world of shifting expectations. Until the night everything changed. It was a Friday in October, the kind where autumn hasn't quite committed to its chill, where summer lingers in surprising pockets of warmth. I'd stayed late after school, working on college essays in the library, and arrived home to find our driveway empty. Dad was at an overnight academic conference in Hartford. Mom should have been home from her job at the local bookstore. The house felt wrong when I entered, too quiet, holding its breath. I dropped my backpack in the hallway and called out, but no answer came. It wasn't until I reached the kitchen that I found the note, hastily scrawled on the back of a grocery receipt. At Aunt Lydia's. Leftovers in fridge. Love you. I microwaved some pasta and tried calling her cell. No answer. Not entirely unusual. Mom was notorious for forgetting to charge her phone. But something about the empty house made me uneasy. I texted Aunt Lydia, trying to sound casual. Hey, is Mom still with you? Just checking when she'll be home? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Finally. She's staying the night, honey. Everything's fine. She just needed some time to think. Time to think? That didn't sound like Mom. She wasn't the dramatic type who needed space. She was steady, pragmatic, the person who smoothed over uncomfortable silences and made sure everyone had what they needed. I tried calling her again after dinner. This time, Aunt Lydia answered Mom's phone. Ethan, sweetie. Your mom's resting right now. What's going on? Is she sick? A pause. Not exactly. She and your dad had a disagreement. About what? It's complicated, honey. Adult stuff. She'll be home tomorrow. I hung up, dissatisfied but unsure what else to ask. Mom and Dad rarely fought. At least not openly. Sure, there were tense silences sometimes, moments where the air seemed to thicken between them, but nothing that would send Mom fleeing to her sister's house. I was dozing off on the couch when my phone buzzed with a text from Brandon, my best friend since 5th grade. Dude, you okay? Heard about your mom. My mom says to call if you need anything. My stomach dropped. What about my mom? I texted back. Oh shit, you don't know? Sorry, man. Thought your dad would have told you. Told me what? They were at Westfield Mall. Your mom and Tamara's mom. Tamara said your dad showed up and there was a scene. Security got involved. My mouth went dry. Tamara White's mother, Sarah, was Mom's closest friend. They worked at the bookstore together. But a scene? Dad? The man who measured his words like ingredients in a precise chemical formula? I called Brandon immediately. What kind of scene? I don't know details, man. Just that it got heated. Tamara said her mom came home really upset. I hung up and tried calling Sarah White. When she answered, her voice was guarded. Ethan? Are you okay, honey? What happened with my parents today? A long silence followed. I think you should talk to your mom about this. She's not answering. Please, Mrs. White. She sighed heavily. Your father saw us having coffee at the mall. He was angry that your mother hadn't told him we were meeting. Things escalated. She paused. Ethan, has he ever been physical with your mom before? Physical? I repeated stupidly, even as something cold and terrible began to unfurl in my stomach. No way. But even as I denied it, memories began to surface like corpses rising in a flood. Mom's clumsiness. The broken wrists Mrs. Keller had mentioned all those years ago. The way Mom sometimes flinched at sudden movements. How she always seemed to have an explanation ready for every injury. And suddenly, with devastating clarity, I remembered her nose surgery when I was 7. The careful explanation, the bandages, the bruising that seemed too extensive for a routine procedure. Oh my God, I whispered. Ethan? Are you alone right now? Yeah, Dad's at a conference until tomorrow. Good. Listen to me. Your mom is safe at Lydia's. Why don't you go there too? I can come pick you up. But I wasn't listening anymore. I had gone to my parents' bedroom, pulled open the bottom drawer of Mom's dresser where she kept photo albums and mementos. Beneath a stack of birthday cards, I found a manila envelope. Inside were medical records, copies of emergency room visits dating back years, sprained wrist, bruised ribs, concussion from falling downstairs. And there it was, nasal reconstruction surgery following household accident. The careful fiction of my childhood disintegrated in my hands. 10 years of not seeing what was right in front of me, of believing the lies we'd all agreed to tell. My phone rang again. Aunt Lydia. Ethan? Your mom wants to talk to you. When Mom's voice came on the line, it sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. I'm sorry, she said. I never wanted you to find out like this. It wasn't a deviated septum, was it? I asked, my voice barely steady. The silence that followed contained a decade of hidden truths. No, she finally said. It wasn't. The weight of that single word seemed to compress the air in the room. I sat on the edge of my parents' bed, their shared bed, surrounded by evidence of a violence I'd never witnessed, but had lived alongside my entire life. Why didn't you tell me? My voice cracked. Not from adolescence this time, but from something deeper, more primal. Why did you stay? Oh, Ethan. Mom's voice was gentle, as if she were consoling me rather than the other way around. When you're in it, it's not as simple as just leaving. And I wanted so badly to protect you from all of this. Protect me? I felt anger rising, hot and unfamiliar. By letting me think he was a good father, by making me love him. She was quiet for a moment. He is a good father to you, Ethan. That part wasn't a lie. I wanted to shout, to reject this impossible compartmentalization. How could someone be a good father but a monster to his wife? But I thought of all the science projects, the baseball games, the patient help with homework, the genuine pride in his eyes when I achieved something. How could those moments coexist with a man who would break his wife's nose? I'm not coming home, Mom said softly. Not this time. What does that mean? It means I've filed for divorce. Your father doesn't know yet. The police have been called about today's incident at the mall. There's a restraining order. I tried to imagine Dad's face when he discovered all this. The careful, controlled mask cracking open to reveal whatever lived beneath. Would he be remorseful? Enraged? Would he try to win her back with promises as I suspected he had done before? Where will we go? I asked. Lydia has room for us until I figure things out. But Ethan? She hesitated. You're 17, almost an adult. If you want to stay with your father... No, I cut her off. No way. I could hear her relief through the phone. Pack some clothes. Sarah's going to pick you up in 20 minutes. After we hung up, I sat motionless for several minutes, staring at the medical records in my lap. The chronology of violence, clinically documented in medical terminology, that somehow made it both more real and more abstract. February 2008. Nasal reconstruction surgery. 3 months before my 7th birthday. 3 months before I hugged my mother carefully in that sunlit bedroom, believing what I'd been told. When I finally stood to pack a bag, I caught sight of a framed photo on my parents' dresser. The three of us at my middle school graduation, smiling broadly. Dad's arm around Mom's shoulders, her smile reaching her eyes. Had she been afraid even then? Or had there been genuine happy moments between the violence? I couldn't reconcile the images, the loving husband and the abuser, the strong mother and the victim, the happy family and the house of secrets. I took clothes from my room, my laptop, chargers, the essentials. As I passed the hallway, I noticed, really noticed for the first time, the small indentation in the wall beside the bathroom. Had Mom's head made that mark? Had I walked past evidence of assault every day on my way to brush my teeth? Outside, headlights swung into our driveway. Mrs. White, right on time. I grabbed my bags and headed for the door, then stopped. Turned back. Walked to Dad's study. It was immaculate as always. Books arranged by subject, papers neatly stacked, his desk calendar marked with upcoming test dates and faculty meetings. On the wall hung his teaching awards, his master's degree in physics from Cornell. I don't know what I was looking for. Some evidence of his other self, perhaps. Some explanation. Instead, I found only the familiar. His reading glasses perched on a stack of student papers. A coffee mug with a faded equation joke. The fountain pen I'd given him for Father's Day last year. As I turned to leave, my eyes fell on a small wooden box on his bookshelf. I'd never paid it much attention before. Just another piece of the background of my life. But now, I opened it. Inside was a collection of small objects. Movie ticket stubs, a pressed flower, a small stone, a blue ribbon. Mementos of his life with Mom. Evidence of love. Or at least what he understood as love. I closed the box and left it where it stood. Some questions have no satisfying answers. Mrs. White was waiting in the driveway, engine running. "You okay, honey?" she asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "I don't know," I answered honestly. She squeezed my hand. "Your mom is one of the strongest people I know. You both will get through this." As we pulled away from the house, the only home I'd ever known, I thought about my mother's nose. How it had healed slightly crooked despite the surgery. How I'd never noticed because it had simply become part of her face to me. How we adapt to broken things until we no longer see the break. Aunt Lydia lived 30 minutes away, in a cluttered apartment above an antique store. As we drove through the darkening evening, I tried to imagine what came next. How we would rebuild our lives from the fragments of truth now scattered around us. "Did you know?" I finally asked Mrs. White. "All these years?" She kept her eyes on the road. "I suspected. Sarah confided in me last year, but Ethan..." She glanced at me. "Domestic violence thrives in silence. Your mother was trapped in a story she couldn't figure out how to end." "Until today," I said. "Until today," she agreed. When we reached Aunt Lydia's, Mom was waiting at the top of the stairs. Her eyes were red but dry. When she hugged me, I held her carefully, automatically mindful of injuries I now understood had been inflicted, not accidental. "I'm sorry," she whispered against my hair. "Don't apologize," I said fiercely. "Not to me, not ever." That night, lying on Aunt Lydia's pull-out couch, I realized that healing isn't just about broken bones knitting back together, or bruises fading from skin. Real healing begins with truth. Painful, complicated, necessary truth. 10 years after I hugged my mother with her bandaged nose, I finally understood what had really happened. And in that understanding, painful as it was, lay the first tentative possibility of genuine healing. For both of us.
Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more interesting content coming soon.